series, and we were having this discussion earlier here, Geltzy. I'm curious to get your take on this. I was saying that the first two games, I think the Celtics were still a little shaken, and rightfully so, after the Isaiah Thomas tragedy as far as his family and his sister dying in a car accident, and how that affected their mood and their perspective for the first two games. At the same time, you had on the Chicago side, you had Rajon Rondo there, and he was doing everything that you expected him to do as soon as he came over to the Bulls organization at the beginning of the year. And now the Celtics seemingly have regained their focus and perhaps to some degree recovered. And then you have on the Bulls side of things, well, Rondo's done. So is it that simple as far as why this series has gone to the first two to Chicago, the last three to the Boston Celtics?
I'll say this, Michael, and I want to be a little bit careful because I don't want to trivialize the tragedy of Isaiah Thomas and his family experience. But I do think some of that, in terms of how it affected the entire Celtics team, is a little bit overblown. I think the larger factor is Rondo not being there. And I think you saw that last night. Isaiah Cannon in the last two games has played really, really well. Mm-hmm. And I thought he played well last night, especially defensively on Isaiah Thomas. Where I thought you had a problem in last night where you really miss Rondo is that Butler and Wade, without Rondo on the floor, are stuck having to get their own shots. And that can be difficult for them both in a big spot. It makes it a lot easier for them with Rondo on the floor, who can get the ball to both of them in the spots that they like. So I will tell you this, maybe some of the stuff with Thomas's tragedy had an effect on the Celtics. This Rondo thing is what turned this series in a big, bad way. Because, listen, Isaiah Cannon's made up for Rondo's absence on the defensive end of the floor. Offensively, they have not been able to find a substitute. And Hoiberg has tried everything he could try to see if he can make this work. And in the end, he hasn't. I mean, he just doesn't have the point guard to do it. One thing I'm surprised about, and again, Cannon has played well. I'm not piling on him. He's done a very nice job in what was a tough spot to be thrown into. I'm a little shocked Hoiberg hasn't played some bigger lineups, slowed it down a little bit, and had Wade and Butler share point guard duties. He's done that for a few stretches in this series, and when he has done that, the Bulls have had some success. So I think there was a little bit of a different formula for Hoiberg to use. The other thing is this, and I stressed this, I believe, on Monday with you guys, about not playing Lopez enough down the stretch. Lopez in games 3 and game 4 played a combined 44 minutes in those two games without foul trouble. He has been the one matchup issue Boston has had that they've been unable to deal with. Lopez on the offensive glass and in the post has been something they haven't been able to handle. Hoiberg going away from that down the stretch in games 3 and games 4 was befuddling to me. I have no idea what Freddie was thinking. Listen, he left him on the floor last night. In the end, the Celtics defense was the big story in the fourth quarter of that game last night. They really did a fantastic job of squeezing the Bulls out of the paint, closing out on shooters in the right way, leaving the right shooters open at the right times. It was a very smart and gutty defensive performance in the fourth quarter by Boston. But I do think there may have been an opportunity in game 3 and game 4 if Hoiberg rides the guy that's been his horse in this series, Robin Lopez, a lot more than he rode him. I think the Bulls may be in a little bit of a different situation here, even with the absence of Rondo.
Yeah, you saw Robin Lopez specifically last night in the third quarter had a great game. And you're right, to go away from that doesn't really make that much sense. But Fred Hoiberg has made a couple of questionable decisions, specifically at the podium, for me at least, in this series. All right, Game 6 Friday in Chicago. Who wins that one?
I think the Celtics are probably going to close him out. The Rondo thing has become too much to conquer. And even if from an X's and O's standpoint, from putting the right guys on the floor in the right spots, doing maybe what I said about Wade and Butler sharing some point guard duties, having Butler initiate offense, with all of that, I don't know that they can substitute for the absence of Rondo. The value of whoever they're putting in to replace him, whether it's putting Wade or Butler or it's more Cannon. Carter Williams has been terrible in this series. They just don't have the right guy to put in there. And let's face it, it's the one spot where they couldn't afford to lose their guy. Short of Jimmy Butler, Rondo's the most important player on that team. More important than Dwayne Wade. They could lose Dwayne Wade and figure out a way to cover for that. It was nice to have him, don't get me wrong, but they could lose Dwayne Wade and still be competitive in this series. Losing Rondo because of the presence of Isaiah Thomas. Because here's the other thing that's happened. Cannon has been okay offensively, but Thomas is a guy that needs to be hidden on the defensive end of the floor, and Cannon's an easy spot to hide him. Rondo becomes a tougher spot to hide him, and not that Rondo's so good scoring, but if Rondo breaks him down off the bounce or can be physical with him in the low post and be able to get to a point where you have to bring a double there, well, then Rondo has got you exactly where he wants you. So that's the other problem with all this. In the end, I just don't think the Bulls can compensate for the loss of Rondo enough to win here, even at home, against the Boston Celtics. I think the Celtics will finish them in 6.